presentation's probably really important. Anyway, so we're going to do a little bit of VBA, Visual Basic for Applications. Nice thing about VBA is it can be added to any Microsoft Office application, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Access. And it gives you all kinds of power to do stuff that other people can't do. So, anyway. So it's all about objects like buttons and pictures, text boxes, all the same kind of stuff we've been working with in Access as well. And we're going to be working on the properties of those objects. And the code that you write can manipulate, change, and test those properties. So you kind of got to think about this as a combination of what we've been doing and your Python class. So hopefully you've been doing well in your Intro to Programming course and you're enjoying it. So we're going to do some very intro level stuff in VBA because it is a new language for you. It's similar to Python, you know, like the way you've got the if statement like you do in Python. And you test if something is true. Number greater than 2. In Python you indent, right? You put a colon on the end and you indent. In Visual Basic you say then. So if that's true then, you'll do this. Do this. And then you have the word else, just like you do in Python. And the else condition would be do that, you know, whatever it is that you want to do. And in Python you just return back to the non-indented line, right? That's how you end the if statement, or a loop, or whatever you're doing. In Visual Basic you say end if. So it's very, very similar. All programming languages are similar that way. They all have if statements. They all have looping, like do while something is true. And they have variables. They have integer variables and they have floating point type variables. So they're all more or less the same that way. So anyway, and you don't have to worry about memorizing a lot of stuff for this test coming up because it's open book, just like your last one was. So you've got access to all this reference information. You've got access to the PowerPoints I'm going to do for you, the examples that you work on. So it's open book. Anyway, so VBA code runs as a response to an event. So when you run your Python program, you type Python and then your program name, and it runs the program, right? And that's really the only way you run your Python program. When you start working with ArcGIS and programming, you'll have buttons like we're going to work with today to run your Python code. And we're going to run some VBA code using buttons and such. So, okay, so. And next semester you're going to have a course called Advanced Programming or something like that, where you will actually be using Python, using ArcGIS, and putting them together. This is just to kind of introduce you to a GUI type of programming, and you know, it goes with Access, because this was an Access course, so that's why we're doing VBA as opposed to Python in this class. Okay, anyway, so first thing is the term modules. Your program code is contained in what are called modules. So we've had tables, queries, forms, reports, and the fifth object type is modules. That's where your program code is going to exist. And there's two kinds of modules. There's class modules and standard modules. So we're going to work with standard ones first. Class modules are part of something else, like part of a form. So we're going to do class modules second when we create a form, and then we're going to class module to that. But to start with, we're going to do just a quick standard module. And anything you write in these and you save it, it all goes into that one database file. You know, as you've done all your forms and tables and reports go into that one database file. Same with the stuff you're going to do today. The modules go into the one database file. Okay. Same thing in Word. If you're doing this in Microsoft Word, it goes with your document. If you're doing it in Excel, it goes with your spreadsheet. In Access, it goes with your database. So we're going to do like a follow-along activity, you know, as opposed to me giving you a textbook and you follow through the textbook. In this case, we're actually going to go through the first part of this all together. So let's start Access. Create a blank database and name it VBA, enter your name, and close any open objects. So I'll go through and do that. Access, blank database, name it. What did I say? VBA, intro your name. VBA, intro. Where's that dash? There we go. And it's going in my user's documents. You can put it wherever you want. I guess I better not put it on the C drive. He doesn't like us putting stuff in the C drive. So I'll put it on the D drive in my Mark8 folder, and that's where it's going to go. And create it. And it also said close any open objects. So let's close the table. Close all. Okay, so we're going to start with completely blank. Okay. Everybody good? If you need time, just put up your hand. Okay, so we're going to create a standard module. So we're going to right-click. Oh, first thing. In this case, to get into VBA, we have to tap Alt F11. So let me do that. Alt F11. And that gets me into the Microsoft Visual Basic for Applications. And it shows the name of my, my database, VBA Info Mark. Okay, so this is the screen. It's the same screen for Word or Excel or PowerPoint. If you tap Alt F11, you get into this screen. So I'll just make it bigger. And over here, this is where all our modules are stored. So up there in that kind of top area there, I'm going to right click anywhere in that space and go Insert Module. Not a class module, but just a module. Insert Module. And this is a Visual Basic editor. I don't know how you guys were doing your Python, if you were editing it using Notepad, or if you're editing it using Idle, or what did Dennis use? Idle, yeah. Yeah, well this is the equivalent to that. It's your editor for your Visual Basic code. And that option, Compare Database, just leave that there. It's something special for Access. Excel and PowerPoint don't do that. You go into the VBA editor. Okay, what next? Right click, oh we did that, Insert Module, okay. So next screen, yes, and everything is in what's called a subroutine. The word is sub. And that's really the same as a function. It has to be inside a sub. So the first thing is we're going to type sub space my sub. So let's go in and see what happens when I do that. So sub space my sub. And I'll hit enter, and look what it does. It puts in all kinds of great stuff for me automatically. It's called IntelliSense. I guess it'd be IntelliSense late. It helps you out when you're programming. It helps finish the things you're typing sometimes. Makes your life easier. Puts in the end sub for you because it's required. The round parentheses are required. All I had to type was sub my sub, and it did everything else for me. So everything we write is going to go inside of there, between the sub and the end sub. So just like ifs and end ifs, we have subs and end subs. Okay, so let's see what we're going to do next. yeah, the first time you ever learn a new programming language, you gotta have it display hello world. So in this case, we're going to do what's called a message box. It's spelled MSGBOX, double quotes, hello world, double quotes, and hit enter. So let's try that.
Oh, that's be double quotes.
Yes, it's got to be double quotes, no singles. I know. I love Python. Python is incredible. So it capitalizes things for me as required for keywords. And then click the run button. So there's a green button at the top and a black button to stop and a pause button. All like we're going to click the run button and you should get a message. It actually switches back to the access screen and gives you a message box showing hello world, waiting for you to click the OK button. So it stops the program and waits for you to click the OK button. And when you click the OK button, it's all done and brings you back to the screen. So that's easy. There's another way to do output, and right, you guys use the print statement. So the equivalent of that in VBA is debug.print, and it will come out on a special window called the immediate window. So let's do debug.print hello world. So we'll get rid of the message box. And debug.print. And see how it shows you the print? You can hit the tab key if you want to accept what it's highlighting. Tab key is really good. Debug.print. And what's the rest of the syntax? Hello world, double quote. And it says you can print to your screen the immediate window. View immediate. If the immediate window isn't showing down here, you can always view immediate and it'll show it. But it's already showing in mine. And when I run this, it will print it in the immediate window. That's kind of like your black output screen in Python. View immediate. View immediate window. There it is. Or Control G will bring it up. Okay. Alright, so far so good. Oh, a for next loop. Yeah, so in Python you have for something in, and then you use range or a list or something like that, or a character in a string. In Visual Basic it's a little more archaic. You don't have a range here. Instead, you have the starting value for your loop. They call this the loop control variable. This is called the loop control variable. In this case, it's called myvar. It's a variable. So the way you do a loop is for myvar equal 1 to 10. So you can say 10 to 20 or whatever you want, and it's inclusive. Remember, if you said range 10, it would go from 0 to 9. That's like exclusive of the ending value, where Visual Basic is inclusive. So it actually does go from 1 to 10. So for myvar equals 1 to 10, debug print, the number is, and then I added a plus sign to concatenate the string of the number. So the string equivalent of the number, the numeric value, converts it into a string and displays it on the screen. And the plus sign, whenever you use the plus sign with strings, it puts them together. Whereas if you use the plus sign with numbers, it adds them up. Adds their numeric values together. Where with strings, it thinks you mean, okay, I want to put these two things together. So you get a message, the number is, and then, so this is what we're going to get if we do that. So it's for myvar equals 1 to 10. And then at the bottom of the loop is the word next. So instead of the indentation and colons and stuff, we start the for loop with the for statement and we end the for loop with next. So anything in between gets executed 10 times. So next. And if I run this, I will get, the number is 1 to 10. Okay? So that's a for loop in Visual Basic. So, I don't know if there was a test question on your Python test. Typical use of a for loop is when you know how many times you're going to go through the loop in advance. So it's a counting loop in this case. Okay, now how do you get data from the user? You use the input statement in Python to get something from the keyboard, right? That's how you got your input from the user. In Visual Basic, we have an input box. So, and this is also the while loop as well. So, just like Python, you had a while something is true. It's, so we're going to, first of all, we're going to start by asking the user, do you wish to continue? And whatever they type, yes or no, or y or n, or whatever, will go into this variable called RESP. Just like in Python. That's the way you did an input, sort of. And so whatever the user types will go into the variable response, and we'll say while response is equal to yes. Oh yeah, is Python, if you're testing for equality, what's the operator? Is it a double equals or a single equals? If you want to test if something is equal to something else. Double equals. Well, in Visual Basic, it's a single equals. So, that's why this is an open book situation, because I don't expect you to memorize all these idiosyncrasies of one language compared to another. So it's kind of like having, you're learning French, but they give you a translation dictionary. Anyway, so yeah, so to test for equality, so while response is yes, so if the user entered yes, then we're going to repeat the loop. If the user entered no, we're not going to repeat the loop and we're going to skip it. We're going to quit. So while the user says yes, we are going to message box and say you entered y, and then we're going to get another response. Do you still wish to continue? And if he enters y, we'll go back to the top of the loop and see if it's y, and if it is, we're going to repeat. So as long as the user keeps entering a capital Y, it's going to repeat. If he enters anything else, it will stop. So make sure you stop me if you don't understand something. Okay, so let me try this. Okay, so RESP equals input box. Do you wish to continue? Do while RESP equals yes. And message box. Do you still wish to continue? RESP equals. Oh no, I'm sorry. You entered. Ah, right. Show him what he entered. Message box. Response first. Yeah. Response equals input box. Oh, I'm messing this up. Hold on. Alright. I know. I wish I had two screens like you guys do. Okay, message box. You entered. Okay. Message box. You entered plus response. There we go. Response equals input box. Do you still wish to continue? Oh, double quotes. Wish to continue. And now the end of the loop is specified by loop. So instead of the, losing the indentation, we end our loop with the word loop. Basically BASIC is a very old language. It's from the 1980s, maybe even back into the 70s, back in the early days of personal computers like the Commodore 64 or the VIC-20. That's why it's kind of different than other languages. Yeah, so that's a do loop, and it actually says do loop. So we loop while that is true. So, and if I want, I could say at the end, I can say message box, the end, just to show you that, you know, this repeats over and over again, and once the loop's done, we get a message out that says the end. So, let's try it. Do you wish to continue? Capital, yes. You entered Y. Do you still wish to continue? Yes. You entered Y. Do you still wish to continue? No. The end. Okay. Alright, so another one is the if-else control structure. This is testing to see if the user entered a Y. If he did, then we'll say me too. Otherwise, we'll say, I'm sorry, you don't like cheese. Oh yeah, we start by asking the person, do you like cheese? And if the response equals yes, we output me too. Otherwise, I'm not going to do this one. It's fairly obvious how that works. So if, else, and if. There are many other control structures, and that's one of the reasons why Visual Basic is a little bit difficult to teach as a first language, because most textbooks go through all these other ways of control structures. There's top and bottom testing loops, there's while loops and do while loops, there's do until loops, which is the opposite of a do while loop. It's absurd how many different ways there are to do loops in Visual Basic. And it makes it hard to learn because students think they have to learn all of them, and they don't. You don't really need those other structures necessarily. You can always do what you want to do with just for and while. And you don't even need a for loop. You can get away with a while loop. Or with a while loop. And there's also select case. Is there case in Python? I'm trying to remember. Switch case? No? Never went into it? Okay, you did the if, else if ladder. That's what you did, yeah. If and elif. Remember there's no S in Python? Visual Basic has something similar.
They don't have it.
They don't, eh? Okay. Alright. Sounds good. So that's the introduction to the language. That's the basic comparison with Python as far as what we're going to be doing. Now we're going to start going into the other type of modules, which is called the class modules. So the first module was just the generic type of module, and the class module is where we create a module within a form. So this is more typical. Class modules. Well, let's just go through it. We're going to create a blank form, and we're going to save it as FRM. Ah, yes. We're going to be naming our objects. Let me just show, before we do that, I just want to go to the next slide and talk about how we name our objects. In these GUI type programming languages, like you guys only had to worry about a handful of variables and some keywords. In GUI programming languages, you have to worry about all these different objects. Pictures, buttons, text boxes, labels, and all these objects are really, really important things, and you need to keep them straight. Am I thinking about a variable, or am I thinking about an object? What object? What kind of object is it? So the first thing we do is we get serious with how we name our objects. So all of our objects are going to have a 3-character naming convention prefix, kind of starting thing. Buttons are going to be named BTN. Pictures are going to be named PIC. Text boxes are going to be named TXT. Labels are going to be named LBL. Radio buttons are going to be named RAD. Forms are going to be named FRM. So that's called a camel case. The reason it's called camel case is because it kind of looks like a camel with the capital letters in the middle of it, with humps. That's why it's called camel case. So the words we capitalize, the first three characters are lowercase, then we capitalize the rest of the identifier, whatever it may be. So a button would be BTN, click me, or a form would be FRM, hotel room, or a text box would be text age, like that. So that's called camel case. It's a standard in programming now. So going back to my previous slide, we're going to create a blank form and save it and name it as FRM hotel room. And then we're going to go into design mode and we'll follow along. So let's do that first. Create a blank form and go into design mode. So I can Alt F11 to get out of this and get back into Access. Or, like, both windows are open in the bottom. You can see there's two things to choose from here, the VBA or the Access. So here I'm going to create a form and go into design mode. So I can just click Form Design and that'll take me into design mode right away. And I gotta name it. So I guess I'll close it, name it. Oh, that didn't work. Okay. How do I create a form and name it?
If you click save.
Oh, okay, thank you. Great, click save.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it, thanks. Excellent. FRM, oh, lowercase, FRM hotel room. Alright. Let's go back to PowerPoint. Create, okay, name it form. Enter design mode. Add a button to the form, but click cancel to abort the button wizard. So I'm going to add a button. There's my button. And I'm going to click cancel to cancel the, not finish, but cancel. Cancel the button wizard. Okay. With the button selected, click property sheet, or you can just right click on the button and say property. Right click on the button, properties. Oh, that closed it. Okay. Properties. There we go. There's the property sheet over on the right hand side of the button. The button selected, I'm in the button's property sheet. The first thing you do whenever you create a new object is give it a name. And that is in the Other tab. So you go into the Other tab and give it a name right away. We're not going to use the default, we're going to call it Button Click Me. BTN Click Me. Okay. Change the name to Button Click Me. Okay. And the naming conventions, I went through that. Okay. We're going to create, what are we doing? Creating the module for the form. In the property sheet for the button, select the Event tab. In the On-Click field, use the down arrow and select Event Procedure. So I'll show you how to do this. So in the property sheet, it's in Event tab, and the On-Click, you bring it down, you choose Event Procedure, and you click the ellipse, or whatever they call that, 3 dots, and it'll take you into VBA code for the button. So it opens up automatically by doing that. It takes me into the code module that's going to run when I click that button. So let's see what we're going to do when I click the button. So examine the name of the sub that was created. So the name of the sub that was created is, it's based on the name of the button, button click me underscore click. So this function or subroutine runs when I click the button. You can simply output hello world using a message box. Okay, let's try it. Message box. Hello world. Now to go back, you can go back to the form. Instead of clicking the green button now, this is a class module, so we want to run it from the form. So this is kind of a little bit weird in that when we switch to form view, it runs the form and allows me to click the button. When I click it, it runs that code. Button click me _ click. And it ran that code and it says hello world. Okay, so that's what runs when I click the button. Return to the form by clicking this button in the upper left area, so go ahead and run it. I can... Where's that button? Or where's that thing? The upper, let's say upper? I don't have that in mind.
It's in the Visual Basics one.
Oh, it's in the VBA. Okay, Visual Basic for applications. You're absolutely right. Yes, to get back to the form, you can run that. That's right. That gets you back, and you can switch to form view, and it runs it, and we're good to go. Go back into design view in order to make changes. Okay. So form view, to enable the application to run, you simply switch to form view. Then click the button a few times. If the code doesn't run, call for help. I assume it ran for everybody. Okay, let's do another kind of control. We're going to do an image control and have a picture. In design view, expand the list of controls so that you can see them all. The last one is the image control. Select it, add it to your form. Above your button, click cancel to abort loading an image. Okay. So I'm going to add an image button or an image control, so I can expand the list. And that last one is an image. Put it above my button and put it over and cancel. Move my button down. So there's my image control. Okay. Oops. There we go. Change its name. Like I said, the first thing you do whenever you add an object is change its name to what you want. It's going to be IMG standard room. So that's selected, other, IMG standard room. Okay. In the Format tab, Picture Property, select the standard room image that you will find in the GIS 403. Oh yeah, there's some images that I included. They're on our server. VBA data file, so I'll show you how to find it. So we'll do that now. So it's in Format, Picture Property. So let's go into, oops, there. So Format, Picture Property is the third one down. And I select the ... and it allows me to go to the server, GIS 403. VBA data files, and it's the standard room. And then we go size, mode, property, and stretch. And that makes it fill the area of the image box. So picture mode or size mode stretch. I did the picture property,
yep.
And the ...
Oh, there it is, I see it.
Yeah, ... and then go to the GIS server under this course, GIS 403, VBA data files, and you'll find standard room. Stretch. Image, or size mode stretch. So we've already worked with some properties. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to make the picture disappear and reappear. It's called toggling. We're going to toggle the visible property to true and false. So there's a visible property for this picture, and we can make it visible equals true, and it'll make it appear. We can say visible equals false, and make it disappear. And we can also test to see if it's currently true, and if it is, we can change it to false. And if it's currently false, we can change it to true. So we're going to toggle it by going, if the standard room dot visible property is equal to true, then we're going to set it false, the visible property. Otherwise, well, it must be visible. No, it must be invisible, so we want to set it visible. So we're just going to toggle it on and off, depending on its current visibility. And then end it. So that's the code we're going to put in now for our button click. We've already got... Oh, and I put a single quote. What's comment in Python? Is it a pound sign, or what's comment? How do you make a comment?
Pound sign to the...
Pound sign for comment. In Visual Basic, it's a single quote. Ooh, there's that single quote.
That's going to get confusing.
I know. It's because it's a throwback from the 80s. Anytime we got throwbacks from the 80s, it's always confusing, isn't it? Computing is littered with legacy stuff. Here's a good legacy example of the single quote. Actually, let me tell you, in the original BASIC, you used to have to say REM, like the band. REM for remark, and that's how you did a comment. By the characters REM, and then the rest of the line would be a comment. Wow. Anyway, single quote for VBA makes it a comment, so it gets rid of the message box, but leaves it there for us, and we'll put that in. So I'll quote that out. Single quote. Turns green. If image standard room dot viz, I type VI and it brings up visible. See how I did that? It knows that I'm talking about the visible property for standard room object. So it brought that up for me. I'm just going to hit the tab key because that's what I want. Is equal to, what do I want to do? If it's equal to true, I want to set it false. So if it's equal to true, then, I have to use the word then, image standard room dot visible is equal to false. Else, image standard room dot visible is equal to true. And end cycle. So I'm sure you can appreciate why I'm video recording this, because anybody that's missing class today would surely do poorly on the next test. So that's why I'm going to post this video on online for people that aren't here to see. Okay, so let's try this and switch back to our form, and I'll run it. And when I click the button, oh, it crashes. There you go. We gotta have a crash, right? Right? You guys have had lots of errors in your Python programs, right? What do you get? You get some cryptic messages on the screen trying to tell you where your problem is. Well, my problem is I'm doing a block if without an end if. I forgot the end if. I got the end sub, but I don't have the end if. So. There we go. Let's try that again. Form view. Click the button. Oh, I'm in design view. I want to go to form view. Uh-oh. Aha! Here's a case where I can't do anything. My program won't run. And if you're ever in the situation, you can always hit Alt F11. Alt F11 to get you back. And you can click the stop button. There's the stop button. It's called reset. So you can hit that button and it'll stop. And now I'm back in control. And I can run my form. Oh, I'm already in form.
I gotta run.
Oh, you do it. There we go, form view. I click my button and the image disappears. I click my button and the image reappears. So, it's toggling the image. So, and if I want to change the name of the button that appears in the text that appears on the button, it's called the caption property. So if I want to change what shows on the button, it's not the name, it's the caption property. So let me go back to design view, back to my code, or back to my design. And if I want to change the property of that button, I can select the button and find caption, and that's where I can change the text that appears on the button. I can say, click me, with a space, oops, and then when I run it, it says click me. So, that's how we change the visible property of a picture. Make it disappear. Okay, where are we? Okay. Now what we're going to do is I think I'm going to let you guys go for half an hour and try to finish this up, and then we'll move on to the next section. So what we're going to do is you're going to add another, great, we're going to add another image. So what we're going to do is we're going to have two images, one's called the standard room, one's called the deluxe room. And we're going to add another button. We're going to have a button called standard room and one called deluxe room. And we're going to change the code to toggle the visible property for the deluxe room image. So we're going to add a deluxe room button and have it toggle the deluxe room image. Okay. So I have two buttons and two images. And the button will toggle the image. Actually, I'll do that one with you. Button click me. Oh, we're going to have a button standard room and a button deluxe room. So when I run it and I click on standard, right, by default they're both visible. When I click on standard, it makes my standard room visible and my deluxe invisible. When I click on deluxe, it makes the deluxe visible and the standard invisible. So there's no if statement in this one. It just simply performs that function. When I click standard, it makes standard visible and deluxe invisible. If I click deluxe, it makes standard invisible and makes deluxe visible, as opposed to toggle if statement. Okay. Form load event. So the problem is, when I run this, I want both images to be invisible. So I'm going to use what's called the form load event. So when you first run the form initially, I don't know if you guys learned about initializing stuff at the top of your program. Like anytime you got to do a counter, you always got to initialize it to 0. Well, this is the case where we want to initialize the form such that both images are invisible to start with. So click somewhere on the form, but away from the details section. Oh, okay. Doesn't sound like fun. Let's see. Design view. So away from the details section. So over here in the blue. The gray area over there. On the properties, event on load, click the down arrow, event procedure, and the ... So, so this is the form, event procedure. Oh, I'm sorry, on load. not on current, on load, event procedure, and dot, dot, dot. And what it does is it creates a subroutine that will run once when the form is first loaded. There's my deluxe room subroutine, my standard room subroutine, and my form load. Oh, okay, form load, yeah. And enter logic to make the two images invisible when the form loads. Well, that's easy. Image, I'll just copy them. I'm just going to copy and paste and set them both to false. There. Rather than typing, I like to copy and paste. And I've already, I've tested something, I know it works, so I know I've spelt these correctly and everything. So now when I run it, hopefully, they're both invisible. When I click standard, it makes the standard room visible. When I click deluxe, it makes the deluxe visible. So that works great. Okay, so that's your first assignment. Is to write this program. You can do background on your form if you like to do colors. You can change the color properties of buttons if you wish. It's not absolutely required. It's only if you choose to do colors. You don't have to do colors. It's not required. But some people like to do that kind of stuff. Oh, and we're going to have labels. We got two labels. We've got this label that gives the user instructions. It says choose a room type and then click the select room button. So that's just a label with text in it. And we can make that label invisible and make a second label visible that says you have completed your room selection. So that's what it looks like. And here's the requirements of the program. This is a typical situation where you're given a significant description of how the program is going to behave. Because this is a big deal, is to try to get it exactly the way the user wants it. So the purpose, the hotel room selection program will allow a user to view different room types and make a room selection. From the window on the screen, the user should choose the room type and then make a room selection. So you can go back and look at the standard room or look at the deluxe room, go back and forth, but then you choose the third button that says make a selection. When the user chooses a room type, a picture of that room type is displayed. Only one picture would be displayed at a time. When the user makes a room selection, a confirmation message should be displayed. In addition, the user should be prevented from identifying a room type after the room selection is made. So once they select a room, not only does it say you have made your selection, but it also disables the buttons. There's an enable property that you can set false for the buttons. To disable them, kind of gray them out so you can't click on them. You've seen that in Windows applications where there's a button there but you can't click on it. That's called enabled equals false. So here's the use case description, kind of describes how the user uses the application. User clicks standard room or deluxe room. Program displays a picture of the room. User clicks room buttons to view rooms if desired. User clicks the select room button. Program displays a room selection message and disables both room buttons and the select room button. The exit window button becomes active. There's a fourth button called exit. User terminates the program by clicking the exit window button. So, just looking back at that again, there's the, so initially, until the user makes a selection, the exit window is disabled. So they can choose this button, or this button. Once they choose this button, it displays this message, disables those buttons, and only enables the exit window button. And displays that label. So, just to show you some of the things you're going to need, some of the properties you will need to know about, is a couple of button properties. One is called the caption, which is the text that's displayed on the button. Another one is whether it's enabled. You can set enabled true or false. So you set it true to enable it and false to disable it, and it gets grayed out. And it won't cause an event when the user clicks on it. Then we have labels. Properties you can change are like the font. You can make it different font. We've done that before. You can make the label visible as well. So you can make the label set visible to false to make it invisible. Image properties, we looked at that. Form properties. We can do background color if you like. And to exit the form, this is a little bit complicated. This is the VBA code that you want to run when the user clicks the exit. So this is inside the exit button. Click subroutine. It's called do command.close AC form, comma, double quote, and then the name of your form, double quote. So that's how you exit. It's a little bit funny, but anyway, I wish it was just an exit command, but there isn't. That's the way you exit the form. And like I said, if you're ever stuck and you can't get back, you just hit Alt F11 and you can click the stop button. And then we've got problem 2. I'll go through this quickly with you. This is another form application that you're going to do. We're going to have a text box and a label. This is the label. This is the label. That's a label. All the text on the screen is a label. So you've got several labels that you just put in the text. This one here is a text box label, and this is the label where the answer is going to be displayed. So this is your input, and this is your output. And the user can click any of these boxes to calculate the cost, and it'll just simply multiply this numeric value by that numeric value. That one's fixed. And so 5 times 99 is 495, and it'll display it in the label. So that's easy for you to do in Python. You just do an input of how many songs do you want to download, and just multiply them by 9.99 and print the answer. Well, in this case now we have to get the number from a text box. It comes in as a string. We have to convert it into numeric. We have to multiply it by 0.99 and then convert it back to a string using currency format. And there's some real easy ways to do that. So we're going to use a text box for the input. And this is how we use a text box in our code. In order to get the input from the text box, we have to first do the set focus. That gets the I guess the cursor in that area or whatever. And then to get the numeric value for the number that the user entered into the textbooks, this is the text property of the textbooks, and we have to convert that into a value. So we use the function called val. It's built into Visual Basic. Because it comes in as a string, and you can't do mathematical calculations with strings, as you know. You have to convert them into numeric first. So this will convert it into a numeric and assign it to this variable called mynum. And you can just say cost equals mynum times 0.99. And then in order to display the output in the output label, you just say, here's the cost. It's called, I named it label cost. And the text property of the label is called caption. So they're a little inconsistent with their Microsoft Visual Basic. The text property of a text box is called text, but the text property of a label is called caption. That's weird, but that's the way Microsoft did it. And the way we convert the numeric value back to a string is just say str and in parentheses, and we'll do that. But in order to get currency, if you don't want just a plain numeric value, you can, here's a string type number, 5.2, and if you want to convert it into a numeric value, you can just say val, like I showed you. If you want to convert a numeric value into currency, you use the word format, round brackets, the number, comma, currency. And it will convert the number into a string and put the dollar sign on and the decimal point with the pennies afterwards, the cents. Okay, so that's the way, instead of just converting it into a plain numeric type string, we actually convert it into a currency. So the same idea in Access. We can specify that a numeric value had a currency attribute, and they'll always display it with the dollar sign. Well, this is the way we do it in code, is we use this function called format. And you can specify all kinds of different formats here, percentages or whatever. I don't know what they all are. Okay, so that's how you get the currency display. And what I've provided with for you is, there's a reference here for, if you want to go and look and explore more. I think I've told you everything you need to know in order to be able to do those two little assignments. And but for me, when I'm trying to find something, I use Google. If I wanted to find out how to do VBA currency format, that's what I would do. I Google it. So go ahead and do those two. They can just be two forms within the same database. That way you only have one database file. Just two separate forms, one for the hotel room and one for the digital downloads application. Okay, so I'll let you work on that, and we'll start up again at 2 o'clock, and I'll do the remainder of this. Okay? If you have any problems, give me a shout. This is half an hour to work on this. See what you can get done.